All right. What's going on, y'all? You know what time it is? It's the Black Factor. What? Hold on a second. No, doggone it. Hold on, y'all. I tell y'all, the boy, the producer lady, she's something else. It don't matter which show I'm doing, she always got something going on. Anyway, y'all had to forgive my Frederick Douglass. I'm working my Frederick Douglass tonight, y'all. So check this out. Tonight we're going to talk about. See, we're going to talk about some of the stuff I like to talk about on this show, which is Black history, for one. However, we're going to also we're going to discuss it in a way that makes it make sense, so to speak. You know what? No. Uh, one of the things that I've been thinking, these last couple of days about Black history, and I ain't gonna lie to y'all. We hear people say things like there shouldn't be Black history, but there are different reasons why people say this. On the one hand, you have people who say there shouldn't be any Black history because there should just be history. Then you have people who say there shouldn't be Black history because they don't want the fact that Black people actually have made history and are a part of history to be known, or should I say they don't want it to be prevalent. And in doing my research for tonight's show, and as much as I was aware of the accomplishments of many of our melanated brethren and sisters, a few things occurred to me. And it is actually very humbling when you begin to think about and pay attention to what's really going on out here. And it's almost disturbing, actually. Well, I began to dig into some of the things that are going on in this current social and political, particularly political climate that we're dealing with. And it makes, it's disturbing, y'all. I hate to, there's no other, I can't think of any other real term to use other than disturbing. And here's why. My original idea for this show was to actually talk about, I know y'all have heard the phrase, the real McCoy, right? So here's what happened. There's a gentleman by the name of Elijah J. McCoy, who is the inventor of a very important, or should I say, he invented a very important apparatus that deals with trains. But we're going to get to that in a minute. But as I started doing my homework and I looked up and I went to look up Elijah J. McCoy. Hey, Sheila White, thank you for checking in. I noticed that there were other instances where people are saying things like, well, um, there's the term the real McCoy actually had other origins beside Elijah J. McCoy. And the time frame in which these phrases came to be were in about the same period when he was around. Now, he was born in 1843. His family, by the way, were fugitive slaves that ran to Canada. So he was actually Canadian and became one of the most prolific inventors of color during that time. And in his one of his, he had many inventions, by the way. He got a patent for this one, but in many of his, when he invented this one particular item, it was a way for the trains to be oiled as they traveled. So let me break this down for you. When trains would go across the tracks in the 1800s, the trains would have to pull over. They'd have to stop and not just in 1800s, but they'd have to actually stop in order to oil the bearings, the wheels, and all the different things that needed oiling for the train. So it only goes so far. Then they have to stop. And this guy had been hired because they now mind you, his education was that of an engineer. He was, and I don't mean a train engineer. I mean like an engineer, a guy who creates, builds, a master engineer. Now he went to Europe to study, got his degrees, came back to the States, and of course the railroads wouldn't give him a job as a in that position because of course they didn't want a black man as an engineer. That was unheard of. So they hired him as a fireman, not a fireman that puts out fires, but the guy who actually shovels the coal into the train fire area so that it makes steam to run the train. Well, not only was he the fireman, but he also had to get out. As the train would move along slowly, he would walk along the side of the train and oil the parts on the train that needed oiling so that they could continue to move forward and continue on with the trip. Well, of course, they say necessity is the mother of invention, which is going to bring me to another point about so many of our inventors. That being, there was a necessity for many of the melanated inventors that we're going to talk about tonight to create things that allowed their lives to be easier and those in society rather than have to do the strenuous labor and things that were required in order to get jobs done. This is why things get invented, because someone's looking for an easier way to build a better mousetrap, so to speak. So this guy would walk along the side of the train and he'd oil the parts, the wheels, the bearings, that type of thing. And so he came up with a system that he created, because now remember, this is an educated man. He's an engineer. He created a system to oil the train as it traveled rather than have to slow the train down and stop the train so that he could get off to oil the mechanisms while the train was moving. Now, let's first realize what that means. In order for somebody to do that, it means that the train is going to, of course, use less resources to run. It's going to, of course, lessen the time of travel between places, which then, of course, increases commerce, right? So this is something that he created. Now, it was so good that once he patented it, other people attempted to copy what he had created, but none of them worked the same. They were not as good as what Elijah J. McCoy created. So when people would go from the railroad to purchase these items or the things that the oilers that they would put onto the trains in order to keep them running correctly, because all the others were not operating as they should, the way that McCoy's did, they would ask for the real McCoy. Now, that is the most famous version of where the term the real McCoy came from. So as I searched to find the origin or why the real McCoy came to be, I found another story about a boxer who was pretty savvy in what he did. And he then, they say the phrase was possibly coined behind him, the real McCoy. Then I found another article of a family out of Scotland who were called the McKays, who had moved to the States and began to make alcohol. And rather than say McKay, they said McCoy because their rum was supposed to be the best, so they said they wanted the real McCoy. So that got me to thinking. Here's a black man who invented something that revolutionized rail travel, particularly during that time. And to have others attempt to overshadow his accomplishments and what he did and the things that he created was commonplace. It was like that was what people did. during that time, especially when we're talking about black people who had been during that time, because you got to remember we still had not uh, quite gotten out of slavery and dealing with Reconstruction and moving forward. You have to remember that black people were still being marginalized. The stereotypes, the uh, rhetoric, all of the different narratives that have been created around free black people, some of which still hold today. So that took me further down this rabbit hole. And it brought me to a point where, when we talk about narratives and the marginalization of those who have brilliant minds of the melanated kind, there's often a time and where people have found it necessary to create an environment where it appears that black people are not capable or not able or mindful enough or brilliant enough to do anything of any value. So, when we talk about narratives, just as an example, on February 1st in New York, a New York middle school and its food vendor are now apologizing um, because they served chicken and watermelon for lunch on the first day of Black History Month. An error the vendor called unintentionally insensitive. Students at the Nyack Middle School in Rockland County, just outside New York City, were served chicken and waffles and watermelon, food stereotypically associated with black people. Now, why is that? Because the narrative that was created. Now, you all can go back through my archives on YouTube and look and see where I did a story about a movie that was done by it had Sammy Davis Jr. Um, a dog. The rest of the cast slips my mind. Anyway, he was a child, and what it was a movie that depicted black people in all of the most stereotypical ways that you can imagine. Free sandwiches, free pork chop sandwiches, and stealing chickens and having keeping razors in their pocket and gambling and everything that you could think of. What? Yeah, and they talked about smoking marijuana and so on. All of these things were in this movie, and these are the types of things that create these narratives. Um, there was a also oh my God, I can't believe these names are slipping my mind at the moment. Another movie created during that time by a what was his name? DB. Y'all help me out. My audience, I got a great audience. I know y'all know what I'm talking about. There was a movie. Um, uh, well, anyway, hmm? No, 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 no. This was a very racist movie. This movie, and there's a new movie out with the same name, and it's slipping my mind at the moment. Y'all forgive me because I'm talking off the top of my head here. Anyway, in the movie, and every black character was a white person in blackface, and they were all acting like what white people wanted to say that black people act like, and each of them were basically fiending over white women. Yes, eating all of the stereotypical foods and the whole thing, and it was right after Reconstruction, and it made it like black people were savages, basically. At that time, the president of the United States made a statement that said, and don't, it was said that he said this. Let me say he allegedly made a statement that was said, um, it it is as if that movie was written with lightning. In other words, he said that he believed it to be true. This was also a time during the height of the KKK and their uh, uh, rise. No, Mike Samsonite. No, it wasn't bamboozled. It was. It's gonna hit me in a minute. You know how you draw a blank? I'm drawing a blank right now. Um, Birth of a Nation. Thank you. God. Rashid. Thank you, brother. My man. He's on point. D.W. Griffith. There it is. I could not get that out. Anyway, D.W. Griffith, Birth of a Nation. Not the recent Birth of a Nation that was only been out in a few years. This one was back in the early 1900s. It was a silent film. And the movie allowed for particular stereotypes to become what people believed about black folks. Now, and I'm going somewhere with this. So, to finish this about the watermelon and the school in New York, students at the Nyack Middle School, okay, I read you that part. After Aramark, the school's food vendor changed the menu items without telling the school, according to the administrators. In other words, they already had a menu set up, but because it was February 1st, beginning of Black History Month, they thought they'd be funny and serve watermelon and chicken. The offering of chicken and waffles was an entree with watermelon as a dessert on the 1st of Black History Month was inexcusably insensitive and reflected a lack of understanding of our district's vision to address racial bias, the school said in a letter to parents, according to local news affiliate WABC. The meal was originally supposed to be Philly cheesesteak, broccoli, fresh fruit, according to administrators, and a menu on the school's website. Aramark, now I want y'all to pay attention. Now, that company, Aramark, is a national company. They also deliver uniforms, food service, and other things across the entire country. This is a major corporation. Apologized for the decision in a statement saying it was an unintentional oversight. Now, what I'd like to know is, how were the people who managed to make that happen handled? Were they disciplined? Were they fired? I'm going to look into that now that I think about it. We apologize for the unintentional insensitivity shown on February 1st, the first day of Black History Month, the company said in a statement, according to CNN. While our menu was not intended as a cultural meal, we acknowledge that the timing was inappropriate and our team should have been more thoughtful in its service. Now, New York University severed its ties with Aramark in 2019, about a year after the vendor served a Black history meal that included ribs, collard greens, mac and cheese, and watermelon. So this company apparently has a history of marginalization and basically ignorance, and thinks that it's somehow funny to do these sorts of things and to continue to perpetrate the stereotypes that we as black folks have to deal with on a regular basis as it stands. Now, I'm going down this rabbit hole, right? Because we have currently in our country a constant debate. And I know last night I was on my other show, Inside Stepping, while the president was giving his State of the Union address. But I did get an opportunity to hear part of the rebuttal speech by the Republican governor of, where's she, Arkansas? Where is that woman? The Republican governor gave anyway, y'all know who I'm talking about. And she went on and also was one of the people who has used this thing about CRT as a talking point, as a inflated, and we know inflated things are full of air. There's nothing there. An inflated way to try and describe what people should be offended by. We have to be careful when we listen to our political heads and the people who call themselves our leaders, those who we unfortunately put into positions of power. Yes, Joan Davis, thank you, Huckabee. Huckabee, that's Mike Huckabee's daughter. Sarah Huckabee is Arkansas, yeah. We have to be careful because as it stands here lately, I don't see any politicians actually doing anything for the people. They're doing things that are self-serving, and they're creating the narrative that allows people to believe that certain things are happening when they're really not. Now, the fact is, critical race theory or anything pertaining to something of that same nature, I think it's very timely that is a topic as we are moving through this month, particularly because this guy Santos down in Florida, the governor in Florida, He has outlawed basically any teachings of anything that deals with black social issues or really black history. He claims there's no academic value in teaching it. Here's the fact, y'all. There's incredible value in teaching this. One of his purported um, ideologies, one of the statements that he made is that they don't want young white children to feel inferior or as though they are not worthy, important, want to somehow destroy their psyche and make them believe that they should be apologetic for their ancestors' behavior. Well, we know they're enjoying the fruits of their ancestors' debauchery. But here's the thing, and this is what stands out the most for me. We have black children within these same school systems. Something that occurred to me when Barack Obama had gotten elected. I turned to my wife and I said, for the first time in the history of this country, when a person of color tells their child, you can be president one day too, they're not actually pulling their leg. They're not gaslighting. They're not hoping against hope that this is possible because we've seen it with our own eyes finally. But the main thing that stood out in my mind was that this does give hope to children who otherwise would not believe that they could ever be anything of any relevance in this country other than an athlete or an entertainer. We have many brilliant minds in this country, people of color, but they're not glorified. They're not held up the way that we historically have held up individuals throughout our academic understandings. When as we grew and we were in schools and all this kind of thing, we always got to hear about the white heroes. We always got to hear about the guys that created this or did that or fought in this war and did all of these wonderful things. Rarely did we have an opportunity to hear anything about black folks. They pulled a couple out, and every Black History Month now we get to hear about Dr. King and Coretta Scott King and Rosa Parks and all the other typical individuals who, by the way, not to diminish any of their greatness, but let's keep it 100. The reason why people like DeSantos don't want young black children, or even white children for that matter, to learn the truth about and be educated about what black folks created in this country, because it would cause them to actually have to see those of color as their equal, if not in some cases greater. Let's face it, y'all. It ain't about black folks. It ain't about white folks. It's about the mind. Every time DeSantos goes to his mailbox, and every white child who goes to their mailbox, how much would it hurt them to know that Philip Downing in 1891 created the mailbox? How hard would it be for all of these people to understand that Garrett Morgan face should be stamped on every stoplight where you see the red, yellow, and the green? What about every time you get in your car and you hit the thing? Nowadays they got the push buttons, or you get in there and you pull your car down and you put it in drive. You can thank Richard Spikes for that. Automatic transmission. Every time DeSantos' housekeeper goes and puts his clothes in the dryer, you could thank George T. Sampson for that. Okay? Electric, automatic elevator doors. Alexander Miles. Now, they say Alexander Miles came up with these automatic doors was because his daughter suffered a life-threatening injury because she fell down an elevator shaft. See, remember what I said. Necessity is the mother of invention. Prior to that, the elevator doors were opened by either the people on the elevator or the elevator operator. And by the way, Alexander Miles was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2007 for that invention, which, by the way, is still the mechanism used every time you get on and off an elevator today. 1887, y'all. You feel me? What would it be? What would it be like every time DeSantos and his homies go down to the golf course and they take one of those little wooden things and they stick it in the ground and put their golf ball on top of the golf tee? You can thank George Grant for that. Feel me? All of these country clubs that kept black folks out and them white guys, before there was a golf tee, they literally took their hands and took dirt and made mounds to put the golf balls on to hit the balls. But you got black folks that couldn't even get in a country club all the way up into the 1970s. Think about that. Every time you unfold a chair to sit down, you need to think about John Purdy. Every time you sit down on a toilet, Thomas Elkins. Okay? See, these lists go on and on. Every time you buy a bag of potato chips, every time DeSantos serves his kids a bag of potato chips, George Speck. Now, you want to hear something funny about this story? The invention of the potato chip came out of the black man's righteous indignation. You dig? He was pissed off. This is how the potato chip came to be. So, George Speck was an American chef, a hunter, and a guide, and he was noted for his culinary skills at Moon's Lake House in New York City. Local legend says that in the summer of 1853, his invention of the potato chip was the result of a returned dinner. And he was a chef now. You know, you don't piss the chef off. After an unhappy customer returned their potatoes to the chef saying they were too thick. So Speck then sliced the potato thin, deep fried them, and returned them to the customer. These crisps soon became an instant hit and quickly became one of the world's biggest snacks. So every time these white folks who think black people don't know nothing, every time they pick up a bag of potato chips, they need to remember who came up with that. The gas mask, Garrett Morgan. He called it a safety hood because he saw men running into burning buildings and suffering from smoke inhalation. This was to keep them from dying while rescuing others. Every time you receive something refrigerated in your grocery store, the stuff that you literally go and you shop through the freezer to get, you can thank Frederick McKinley. Okay? Here's a guy who invented the refrigerated truck. You know, I've been in the trucking business a long time, y'all. And I tell you what, it's funny to be out there on that road and you on a CB or you in a truck stop, and there are so many ignorant truckers who use those microphones as a tool. They kind of like, they're almost as bad. Matter of fact, the CB was the first internet. They get on the CB, and you know how you got them keyboard cowboys. They get on here and they get to talking real crazy on the internet. Well, they did the same thing on the CB radio because you don't know where they are. All they doing is talking over the airwaves. So they get on there and say a whole bunch of slick stuff. Well, those same guys should think when they're asleep at night and that reefer sitting on that trailer behind them and it's rocking them to sleep because that thing kick on and kick off to keep that meat froze while they drive across country. Frederick McKinley Jones, y'all. He created that. Now, he was born in Covington, Kentucky, near Cincinnati. He served in France in World War I. After he returned home, he worked as a garage mechanic. And with this experience, he developed a self-starting gasoline. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. This is same guy. Self-starting gasoline motor. All right. This man created so many different things. Matter of fact, let me just read this to you because he has an amazing uh, uh, resume. But now I want you to think about this. One brilliant mind created enough stuff that makes our lives easier every single day. Okay. Now, he developed a self-starting gasoline engine. Do you know what that means? Do you have any idea what that actually means? Um, his mastery of electronic devices was largely self-taught through work experience and the inventing process. Now, when I say self-starting engine, I want y'all to remember, let's think back. When you first saw the first cars that came out and were on the road, you had to get out in front, put a crank handle on them, and crank those motors to start, right? Self-starting engine. Frederick McKinley Jones. All right. After brief stints working aboard a steamship and a hotel, Jones moved to Hallock, Minnesota, began designing and building race cars, and drove them at local tracks and at county fairs. His favorite car was known as number 15 and was so well designed that it defeated all other automobiles and once won a race against an airplane. He soon took a job as a mechanic on a railroad magnate James J. Hill's farm in Kitson County. In the late 1920s, Jones designed a series of devices for the developing movie industry, which adapted silent movie projectors to use talking movie stock. He also developed an apparatus for the movie box office that delivers tickets. You know how you go to the show and they shoot them tickets out of the thing? You know, you pay for your tickets. I don't know if they still do that or not, but I know back in the day when we were young and you pay for your tickets and the tickets would pop out the little machine. That's him. He did that. He also invented a snowmobile. Wait, hold it. Say what now? A snowmobile. Imagine that. Frederick Jones was granted more than 40 patents in the field of refrigeration. In 1935, he invented the first automatic refrigeration system for long-haul trucks and railroad cars in 1935, a roof-mounted cooling device. The system eliminated the risk of food spoilage during long-distance shipping trips and was later adapted to other common carriers, including ships, railway cars. His patent was issued in 1949. Now, I want to stop right here, and I want to explain something. Do we understand that if these things were taught as part of history, American history, not black history, not history, what would stop our children from idolizing athletes and entertainers? Nothing wrong with them idolizing them. But what would it be like if our children saw these people and being an inventor became a sport within itself? Being an inventor became the thing to do because you could create and have patents and be famous for stuff and get paid for what you thought of, rather than chasing a ball or entertaining folks. Imagine what that would be like if this was part of history. Not black history, just history. Now, young black children begin to see themselves in a light that they never thought was possible because that had been always pushed down and pushed away. No, you can't do that. No, you're not good enough for that. No, you're not smart enough for that. Why don't you think about being a janitor? Jones' pioneering designs for mobile refrigeration units led to the Thermo King Corporation. Have y'all ever heard of that? I promise you this right here. If you ever driving alongside a truck and it's got a refrigerator on the front of it, look up there and see if you don't see Thermo King stamped on the side of it. Minneapolis formation in 1935 and revolutionized the field of transport refrigeration of trucks, rail cars, and ships. His invention radically altered America's consumer eating habits. Now people could eat fresh produce across the United States during the middle of the summer or winter. Frederick Jones also developed an air conditioning unit for military field hospitals and a refrigerator for military field kitchens. Jones was one of the most prolific black inventors ever. Frederick Jones patented more than 60 inventions, but is best known for inventing the practical automatic refrigeration system for long-haul trucks. Died on February 21st of 1961. Imagine if our kids were given people like him as role models and who to look up to. All right. The IBM PC monitor, the one that's actually got, the ones we use every day, black man. Otherwise, we'd still be using regular green screen CRTs, right? Now, the list of black inventions is so extensive and so long, and I noticed that a couple of you guys put some up there. Dr. Charles Drew for the heart procedures. There are many, 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 many. Again, when I went into this, as I knew that there were many, it blows my mind. So I didn't mention the normal ones, but a couple of these did surprise me. The ice cream scooper. So y'all, when you go to the ice cream shop, instead of using a spoon, black man invented the ice cream scooper. The biscuit cutter. Coin changer. You know the little things where they used to flip? I don't know. When last time we seen a coin changer? I think I might have one somewhere. Flip the little coin changer, boom. Okay. The rotary engine. Mazda. Rotary engine. Y'all know what that is? If you don't know what that is, now Mazda used a rotary engine in their cars for years and years. I don't know if they still do or not, but the rotary engine. The car coupler. Andrew Beard. Now that was if you see where the two train cars connect and they couple together like this, Andrew Beard, y'all. The letterbox, let's see, stainless steel, torpedo discharger, H. Bradbury. Oh, where would we be without a torpedo discharger in all the wars we've been in, right? Disposable syringe, hospitals everywhere across the entire globe. The corn planter, cotton planter, street sweepers, C.B. Brooks. A street sweeper, y'all. Every time you sitting at home and you see a street sweeper go down the street, I want you to think about C.B. Brooks. The horse bridle, the bit. You know what the bit is? The thing they stick in the horse's mouth and they put the thing around their head? Black man. And y'all know some of the coldest cowboys. And just to give you a little history on the cowboy, understand this. During the time when they came up with the term cowboy, the white guys who worked on the ranches and the farms were called cow hands. They were called a hand because they were handy and they were a hand, an extra hand on the ranch. The black ones were called cowboys. Why? Because they used the term boy like they did in slavery. Boy, cowboy. Now everybody wants to be a cowboy. Isn't that amazing? Let's see. The horseshoe. Oscar Brown invented the horseshoe. Radiation detector. Then we have, of course, paints and stains. George W. Carver. Lotions and soaps. George Carver. Let's see. There's so many. Automatic fishing reel. How many of y'all like to fish? George Cook. The printing press. W.A. Levelette. Let's see. The envelope seal. Y'all know when you got to lick the envelope? Yep. F.W. Leslie. The pressure cooker. How many of y'all be in the kitchen on the pressure cooker? Maurice W. Lee. Okay. Portable pencil sharpener, John Love. The fire extinguisher, Tom Marshall. The shoe last machine, and we've heard that one before. Jan Metzler. Let's see. Hairbrush, Lyda Newman. Let me go down this list. The blimp, J.F. Pickering. See? Yes, Dennis McCullum. I believe that is accurate. The Wright brothers stole the airplane from a black man. I do. That is accurate. The fountain pen, W.B. Purvis. Every time you go to Walmart or you go somewhere and you pick up a pen and write a check. You do it. Black man. Before that, they used the quill pen and the ink. You had to dip in the ink and then write. Black man. The curtain rod. Yep. The thing you hang your curtains on in front of your windows. Black man. The simple dustpan. I.P. Ray. Let's see. The arm for your record player. Joseph Dickinson. That's interesting. The doorknob. O. Dorsey. Bottle caps. Jones and Long. Hydraulic shock absorber. Ralph Sanderson. The guitar. Robert Fleming Jr. Let's see. Bicycle frame. Isaac Johnson. The wrench. John Johnson. You know, the wrench was actually created. John Johnson. Do y'all know who that is? That was a famous boxer. And you ever heard the term monkey wrench? Well, the reason it was called the monkey wrench is because John Johnson is the one who created the wrench. And they referred to him as a monkey. And that's why they called it the monkey wrench. I remember that piece of history. The roller coaster, air brakes, the helicopter, egg beaters, eye protectors, the pacemaker, y'all. The list is it's way too long to even think about reading on this show. But my point is this: we have people that are dead set against, yes, Jack Johnson, thank you, Elmer Watson. We have people that are dead set against the teachings of these sorts of things because of our history and their need to separate themselves from their own dastardly deeds and their ancestors' nonsense that they still benefit from, by the way, having robbed many black people of generational wealth along the way. Imagine had some of the people who had been enslaved or some of the people who had been kept underfoot during these same times. Imagine had their minds been able to flourish. The other things that we can't even think of right now that they thought of then that we'll never know about. See, this is the problem. We have people in this country, and this goes beyond black or white. See, now we're going to get into the green. You are now ostracized for being educated. You are now ostracized for understanding things and having common sense. You are ostracized for being referred to as woke. The new buzzword for white racists, woke. You woke. See, that's them saying you're black or you think like black people. See, you are now ostracized for education in this country because the ignorant are happy to be so, and the smart folks need the ignorant to survive. See, we were deemed as lazy, we were deemed as dumb, yet throughout history, black folks have always done all the heavy lifting. What is that about? What is that about? We cleaned their houses. We nursed their babies. We fed them our cooking. Yet somehow the narrative changed and we became the lazy, shiftless, dumb ones. Isn't that amazing? And we bought into it. We bought it. And unfortunately, there aren't enough of us to promote the things that I'm saying tonight, to bring our children to a place where they understand that they don't have to go out here in these streets and do things that are going to get them into a system designed to warehouse them for the rest of their lives. Why? Because they don't have the esteem necessary to promote them into those positions. Because somebody dropped the ball. Only because somebody didn't tell them. Because maybe their parents and grandparents had been conditioned in a time when conditioning was the way to go, where black people were concerned. Keep you all sleep, not woke, sleep. See, society today, I don't care if you're black, white, it doesn't matter. If you act like you know something, or you're smarter than those who consider themselves in power, there's only one of two things that are going to happen. They're going to attempt to bring you onto their team, or they're going to attempt to destroy you. So now they want to make you feel some kind of way if you're smart. They want to make you feel some kind of way if you're proud. They want you to stay asleep so that they can continue to pick your pockets and treat you however they feel they need to in order to have what they want. The ignorance is real, y'all. And here we are in 2023, literally actually debating with idiots. Idiots have a microphone. Some would say I'm one. But those are generally going to be the ones who think that what I'm saying, they know that it's dangerous to their agenda. I have no agenda. I take that back. My agenda is to show young black folks there is brilliance within you, but I can't realize it for you. I have to push you to find it within yourself. Each and every one of us, I don't care how old you are, there's something in there that was intended to be brought out. You got to find that and you got to bring it out. You got to put it out here so the rest of the world can see the same way so many of our ancestors have, in order to make our lives that much easier, in order to make the lives of those who hate them so much easier. If these people dislike us so much, then stop using some of this stuff. Put it down. Walk away. Yeah, that's what I thought. Not going to do it. See, you dislike what we do, and you believe you live in the greatest country in the world. But what you fail to understand is that this country does not become the economic powerhouse and the industrial powerhouse that it has without the free black labor that put it there. Cotton was 90% manufactured right here in the United States, across the entire globe. This country was responsible for 90% of all the cotton in the world during the 1800s and around those periods, which is what afforded America the wealth that it saw, that it developed. Without the black free labor, America is not America. It's another third world country. Let's keep it 100. Without the brilliant minds of these inventors and others who have contributed through war, through invention, through education to this country, you don't have America. The very first black man to die in the Revolutionary War, the first war fought in this country, was a black man, Crispus Attucks. But see, you don't get to hear about this in our academia today, in our systems that were put in place by those who would keep us marginalized and downplay us and tell us that we're not smart. See, we got to be careful, y'all. We got to be more careful. So all I'm saying is take some of this information and bestow it upon a young person. Teach them that there's more to us and our people, and we have to do it on our own. Because if we rely on school systems such as the systems down in Florida, who have outlawed teaching black children about themselves, or teaching white children that white people are not the only ones that did anything in this country. It's been outlawed. And we expect those people to educate our children? That is a foolish notion. We must teach our own. We must open our own schools, private schools. You know, you got to remember, when the Brown versus Board of Education verdict came down and black children were told that they can go to white schools, you know what a lot of those white folks did? They opened private schools to keep black kids out. It's our time. It's time for us to open our schools and teach real history, American history, not history and then black history. Separate the two. And the only reason it's separated is for the same reason the gaslight is real, the same reason that segregation took place. Because they wanted to keep us separated from them or anything in their sensibilities that was going on, while at the same time taking full advantage of everything that we provided. And it will have us believe that they're the ones that provided it all. The gaslight is real, y'all. The gaslight is real. I'm gonna get out of here, y'all. I could go on all night, and I'm not gonna do that. So, like I said at the very beginning, at the top of this show, it's disturbing. It's disturbing that we have a society where a governor can say, I don't want nobody teaching about black folks. And if you do, you're in trouble. It is disturbing that he can actually say that and still get away with it in 2023. That is amazing to me. But this is where we are, y'all. And it just shows you we haven't come as far as we think we have. But it requires all of us to do the work. All that is required for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank y'all for coming through and hanging out, kicking it, and being a part of the Black Factor. We're back, and we're working it out every chance we get. I want you all to have a good night, have a better weekend. I love you all, and in the words of my good friend Tony Adway, it ain't nothing you can do about it. Peace out, y'all. We gone.